predicted and never made a Capri model. Now's the day. We're looking at the handbag company Capri right now. Isn't that microcap stock? We don't really talk about pullbacks for microcaps. It's at not 9 million market cap. What's it going to pull back to? 0? Let's look at Capri first. We don't really consider those like real companies, like the 5-10 million market caps. Like those aren't, I don't know why you would even trade them, to be honest. You buy a small amount of the company, you're a large shareholder. Yeah, 500 grand, you're you're on the board and you're the largest shareholder. Now you run it. Okay, so I guess these guys have had declining revenue. Let's see if there's some kind of value. It's a lot of debt. The stock's down 50%. We can make a trade today. Stop what you're doing, Martin. Do something else. How about never ever tell me what to do again? It's very important because it's down a lot on a failed merger. We absolutely have to figure out if this is going to be a trade. So I suggest you be quiet. Let me work. So these guys own Versace and Jimmy Choo and Michael Kors. That's right, Tobias. Well, I'm sure that 𝗪𝗏 does all kinds of merger arb. You don't only bet on mergers closing. Sometimes you bet on mergers not closing, which is what they should have bet in this case. Now look, I'm sure they're a very good fund, and not every fund gets every trade right. I don't think 𝗕𝗲𝗅 is doomed. This looks pretty good, actually. Who likes catching fallen lives? 9 times earnings, 9 times old earnings. Had a little bit of a downtrend there. I don't think we should short Capri. It's a 50% drop, not a 20% drop. Oh, there's my food. Be right back. Yeah, I kind of like Capri. I guess we have to think about the options. We have to think about a couple things, right? Yeah, Capri's merger fell through. So we're trying to figure out if we want to buy this thing. So let's see. Some options on Capri. November 15th. Expire in 21 days. 20s? These are the puts. I need the calls, dog. These were deep in the money. Now they are not. I didn't even really know that stock. I just saw a press release. And Tesla's kind of the biggest AI company. 𝗠𝗏, that's not really valuable. Private companies, you can invest in privates. Don't really recommend it if you're not a professional. Capri has to pay the breakup fee? Capri has to pay the breakup fee? I don't think Capri decided to terminate, though. Okay, so cash flow sort of declined 600 to basically 0 at this point. Although they earned 40 last quarter. That's not that bad. Don't worry, we're trying to get portfolio margin. This broker just doesn't let you short without putting up massive amounts of collateral. I've used Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, UBS, Bank of America, Deutsche Bank. You think Capri's is short? I mean, why can't they get back to their old peak earnings? Something permanently broken with Versace? Pretty sure Versace's Versace. Kors is the dog. Well, Kors certainly isn't growing. Yeah, it definitely is a turnaround. That's why the Tapestry shareholders are happy it's gone. I mean, they're a growth by acquisition story. The actual core Michael Kors brand has not grown in a long time. They did a good job of growing Versace a bit. But Jimmy Choo isn't really growing either. They have too many stores. I mean, one way to look at it is, how should it trade on gross profit? It should trade 1 times gross profit. I don't know. I think they could turn Kors around. Average cash flow for the last 8 years, 600. It's not a grower though. Yeah, probably just stay away from this one. Stay away from this one. 7 times earnings. Old peak cash flow or old average cash flow. What usually happens is they just get the fashion wrong. So they lose a little market share. They'll get it back some next season. It's whoever looks good this season. You ever pick up a magazine, look at a fashion ad, and say, what were they thinking? That's basically what I'm talking about. So, I mean, honestly, they had more revenue. Okay? They had more revenue in 2017, in 2024 than 2017. Okay? They did almost $1 billion in cash flow. I don't know. I'm starting to wonder. I actually think might this beat by. It's not going to go up too much, but I mean, they cut costs. They're spending too much. They're spending the wrong way. They probably need a new management team, but ain't that bad. McDonald's is just expensive valuation. IonQ, it's ran a lot. You might want to trim it. Hey, Scholar Rock is rocking again. Yeah, Capri does look like it's bouncing. Probably not going to work, but let's buy a little bit. Tight stop loss, okay? I've had this long standing war with dentistry. Dentistry won, turns out. When I was a kid, I said, there's no need for toothpaste. It's all a conspiracy. It's a scam. They're trying to take your money. It's Procter & Gamble just trying to take your dough. Turns out they were right. You do need to brush your teeth. It's important. It's not a scam. It's not a conspiracy. It's not Epstein. Yeah, I'm happy now. Head cow. I used to use xylitol. It was probably pretty good, actually. Yeah, so I have pretty much 98% of my problems will be over after this weekend, which is great. I do have some little stuff after that, but I'd say like 95%. Yeah, there's no real way to keep growing teeth forever. The ectoderm shuts down after 24 weeks of gestation. It stops giving protein. What's the protein called again? There's a protein that signals it called EDA1. EDA1 gets shut down after like 24 weeks. Had a little surgery, guys. Went well. Iovance. All right, $3 billion market cap, $10, 300 million shares outstanding. That's $3 billion. Iovance, a mid-sized biotech company. Let's see, 229 million in cash. Another 183 million in cash. So around 400 in cash. They actually have a bunch of equipment, interestingly. Depreciation is just usually just straight line. There's rarely salvage value of assets. I mean, this doesn't really matter for most publicly traded companies. You want your forecast to be perfect. You have to know the exact equipment, things like that. You could do it as a private company, maybe. All right, does Iovance have debt? Yeah, 1 million, not much. Okay, so basically no debt. It's around a 2.8 billion enterprise value. I did want to mention, since I mentioned not just stocks but startups, there's a great tool I use. They're not paying me or anything. They should. Called Crunchbase. It's a really great tool. I think you should try it out if you haven't. It's actually got some free features, and the paid version is pretty cheap. And I used it to look up investors, especially. So like, if you're, I don't know, let's pick a recent startup. Here we go, Figure. Figure is 70 million. And I will look at something like this, like who is Parkway Venture Capital? Never heard of them. They've only made 49 investments. That's not a lot. But if you look at some of these other ones, like here's an angel investor. Angel investors are usually much easier to get a hold of. These are a lot of like not well-known investors. I don't know these guys, but they've invested in a lot of companies, 172. I know a few of these guys, but I don't know these guys. Really small, 22 investments in Brooklyn. And sometimes it's a lot easier to get a firm like this to invest in your company than maybe A16Z or Sequoia or something like that. So just something to kind of think about. Patient Square Capital, literally not heard of them. I wonder what that is. Interesting. So it looks like they do PE and just like private, maybe like growth capital. Okay, first fund, 4 billion. Not that big. Largest first time private equity fund ever raised. Yeah, that sounds about right. 6 billion AUM. Interesting. Patient Square Capital. All right, thank you for that heads up. Okay, anyway. So Iovance has a product approved. It's called 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙𝗙
selling pretty well.
𝗪𝗃𝗃. 𝗠𝗿𝗡𝗧𝗏. So this is for melanoma. I'll look at the label. Monitor patients for cytopenia and internal organ hemorrhage. Lovely. Autologous means comes from the patient. So they take your blood. Accelerated approval based on response rate. So these are for people who failed KEYTRUDA, second line metastatic melanoma. Cellular therapy. Administer a lymphodepleting regimen. Oh, okay, so you gotta wipe out the blood cells, replace them, administer. Wow. So it's made for each patient. And you gotta give IL-2. So you gotta give cyclophosphamide. You basically have to wipe out the bone marrow. You have 8% chance of dying just from taking the drug. Whew. Okay, so they take the patient tumor. Okay, it's 23 days, about 34 days to create the drug. So you have melanoma, you're dying, you go to the doctor, he says, I need to cut a piece of your tumor. I'm gonna send it to the lab. They're gonna make a drug just for you in 34 days. The future is here. 32% have a response. That's not that good. Only 4% have a complete response. Complete response is what it sounds like, full remission. But the duration of response is pretty good. Looks like half the patients have a decent response. So, yeah, I mean, the response rate is low for sure, 32%. But if you're dying and you basically have, at this stage, we've metastatic melanoma, failing KEYTRUDA, I mean, what do you have, 6 months to live? You know, you don't have a lot to do at that point. You have a 30% chance of response and about a 50-50 that that's going to be any good for you. Median potential follow-up for DOR is 19 months. That's a little, to me, that's a little sus because the range here says that it's about 50% at 6 to 9 months. But regardless, it's a drug, it works, and it's, I guess, selling. Was this the first quarter of sales? Let's see. I bet you it's $1 zillion. Do they sell Proleukin? They actually have Proleukin? I wanted to buy that drug too. When did they get Proleukin? Gotta buy that thing, raise it up. Okay, there's the approval, February. It's tricky, they have to like get all these centers to actually do the work to administer the drug. It's usually quite expensive. Like a frontline study or something. I mean, the checkpoint inhibitor is doing most of the work here. And lung cancer is like the big indication, probably. Endometrial cancer. A couple of new potential drugs, including a different IL-2. The cost of goods is higher than the revenue. That's pretty rare for anybody that doesn't know. So I wonder what the margins at some point will probably get better. That's a little bit odd. I would think that over time the margins will be in the 50s to 70s or 80s. We know from Kite and those other cell therapy companies, Juno, was it? Okay, so they didn't really have revenue in Q1. So all of this revenue from 𝗤𝗏𝗏 is from this quarter, so 13 in revenue. Unlike most drugs, there's no stocking here, right? So all of that revenue is demand. But you would still think there's some like pent-up demand for people who wanted that treatment, although they wouldn't be living that long to be pent up. I'm just trying to gauge how popular the drug is. And we have to look at other cell therapy companies to get a sense for how well those drugs are selling. Because they're still pain in the ass to administer. Well, this is definitely one commercial launch worth watching. I think probably a lot of the value is going to come in the other indications. Abecma is not autologous though, right? It's off the shelf. So Abecma just works. This is like, you gotta go make the drug just for Mr. Smith or Mrs. Williams. And they wait for the medicine and it costs a fortune. Let's see how much it costs actually. And tag the price. Woohoo! So let me get this straight. This thing is $500,000 and you've got a 30% chance No, this is you got a 30% chance of getting a response. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you got to collect the blood. So $515,000, 30% chance of it working at all. So it's really like $1.5 million to extend your life for 6 months. Whew. Life is the most valuable thing we have. So I'm going to look at the other indications at some point and just kind of like get a sense for the efficacy potential in like lung cancer, because that's also a big indication. Be curious what the margins long-term look like. Probably would be fine. You could see it being a decent long, possibly. I have to keep thinking about it.